the pages of the World Wrestling Federation magazine, here's updates.
Party people, the place to be, what's going on, it's me. I just got finished watching the first episode of the Undertaker Last Ride documentary that's on WWE Network, and I kind of wanted to go over the reviews of it episode by episode with you guys, so that's what we're doing right now. The first episode, let's get right into it. The first episode, really, we got to see a bit of a preview of this WrestleMania. They showed about 13 minutes or so of it, a couple clips. This one takes the perspective of, at least to start, that this is going to be the Undertaker's last match. It's going to be the end for the Undertaker, and we all know, of course, that wasn't unfortunately the case, but that's the point of view that the documentary takes. It starts off at WrestleMania with Roman Reigns, or at least him coming into WrestleMania with Roman Reigns. The clip that we saw of him, you can't keep kayfabe for 10 minutes, kid. And like that's essentially where it starts, and then it kind of goes over rather quickly the Undertaker's beginnings, because come on, like, the Undertaker's been in the business for decades now. Like, this isn't a retrospective of his entire career. It's just supposed to be focused on the end of his career. So it quickly goes through the beginnings of the Undertaker, and then he talks more in depth about how working once a year has changed him. Working once a year, and how the streak helped him be able to work once a year. Apparently, he wasn't even really aware of the streak. Somebody told him about it, and he was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And this whole documentary is the Undertaker talking like, somebody's dad or somebody's granddad. Like, it's not Undertaker, obviously, but like, he reminds, the more you watch this, the more the age and stuff shows on the Undertaker. He talks about how he wanted to work once a year, and how the streak helped him be able to do that, because it allowed him to be, the focus to be more on him coming back to defend the streak, as opposed to him being on the road all the time and working, which I completely understand why he would want that, especially at that point in his career. He wants to be able to have a lighter schedule, stuff like that. However, we then go into some retrospectives with Triple H, Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, talking about how that can affect your career and how slowing down affects you. And how you're not taking the same bumps. Austin has a great line in this where he talks about how, going on the road at Callis, being on the road, taking those bumps every night, it calluses you, it thickens you up, it hardens you a little bit, so that you're in that constant movement, you're in that constant motion, you're taking those bumps on a more regular basis. You're working on a slower schedule, you're not doing that as much. It gets a lot tougher to get up. It gets a lot tougher to get up in the morning. It's a lot tougher to get up off the mat. That's basically what he's talking about, and he's not wrong. It's funny because actually, just before I was watching this, I watched one of the episodes of let's see, Undertaker Last Ride. What's the Jordan one? Is it the last show? The last, what the hell is they doing? what the hell are they doing over in the NBA? The Last Dance with Jordan and them. And the episode I was watching, they were talking about Jordan having to fix his body to go back to basketball from a baseball body. He focused more on, because it's different when you're training your body to do different. Not everything is compatible. A lot of people that may not be into sports or sports entertainment and that stuff, they think, oh, you're an athlete, you should be able to do this, that, or the other. It's not really the same thing. There's some sports that lend themselves easier to others. For instance, baseball and football seem to be relatively compatible with each other. Like, it wasn't a big switch for Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders to be able to do both. Basketball is an entirely different thing. Basketball, you're in constant motion. In those other sports, you're not. There's short bursts of motion, but you're not in constant motion. That's why you see, in terms of wrestlers, boxers have a harder time in the wrestling ring. Like Virgil's a good example of this. Virgil never got over his boxing expertise. Virgil never got over being a boxer, and you can see that with his feet. He was never able to, he was so blocky, he didn't move like a wrestler moves. He moved like a boxer moves in a wrestling ring. And you can see that there, whereas football is a little bit more conducive to that. I used to play football when I was a kid, and a lot of that stuff that we did, even in Pop Warner, translated to what we were doing when I was involved in wrestling. And it was an easier translation from that sport to this sport. So, but when you're not doing that stuff, the term ring rust is real. You know what I mean? When your body's not used to doing that on a regular basis, things happen. It's easy to injure yourself. It's easy to not have the timing right. It's easy to not do what you used to do the way you used to do it. And especially not at the same level when you're not doing it on a more regular basis, the way The Undertaker is. And they talk a lot about that. And it's interesting how you see that dichotomy. Like, on one hand, yes, Taker wanted to have a slower schedule. On the other hand, that slower schedule hindered his performance. And that's one of the themes that I'm starting to get in this documentary that I think might actually be something that we see in this documentary going forward, is that dichotomy, is the whole on one hand there's this, on the other hand there's this. Just like on one hand, Taker talks a lot in this first episode about not wanting to be a parody of himself, about not wanting, you know, the dad in the crowd to say, yeah, he slowed down now, but you should have seen him win. But he's still doing it. You know what I mean? He's talking about how, you know, he doesn't want the foolish pride to keep him in the game too long, but he's still in the game. You know what I mean? There is that duality, and you see it not work itself out, because it doesn't work itself out, unfortunately. And we know when they did this documentary a couple years ago, Taker was still in that stupid Boneyard match just a couple months ago, or just a month ago. And he'll probably still be at WrestleMania again, or SummerSlam again, or whatever. Vince McMahon will probably beg him to come back for SummerSlam because everything's going to be down for that. So he's going to continue to do it, unfortunately, despite the fact that his body is telling him he shouldn't do it. That, you know, there is that duality. But here's another interesting one. Just after they just after they start talking about that duality, they talk about another one where, or at least they show another one where the Undertaker acknowledges he wasn't ready for that match with Roman Reigns. He acknowledges it in real time. He acknowledges in real time that he probably should have said no to that. He shouldn't have been in that match. You know what I mean? They go over the end of the streak and all that other stuff slightly. They don't really discuss how he feels like that should have been how the feeling of that should have been the end of it. Like, they kind of gloss over the end of the streak, and they go more towards the match with Roman Reigns, at least in the first episode. The first episode's title is The Greatest Fear. And they talk a lot that I guess the greatest fear is, you know, being too old to do it. The problem is they don't reconcile with the fact that he is too old to do it, that he is too broken down to do it, that he should not be doing this anymore. They don't reconcile that. They don't entirely justify it either. They acknowledge that it's in the room. They acknowledge that the end of Taker's career is in the room, but they don't acknowledge the fact that the end of Taker's career has been ignored for years now, to the detriment of everyone involved. He says stuff like he doesn't want to embarrass the business, etc., etc. He doesn't want to embarrass himself, and yet they don't acknowledge the fact that he has for years. Like, I was watching it with my homeboy Trey, who I do the podcast, How Do We Even Get Here with, and he was saying the same thing. I wasn't saying anything. He was like, it should have been over years ago, bro. He should have been over. He should have retired years ago. He should have retired years ago. And that's a problem that they know it exists, but they don't fix it. They're not, nobody involved in this. Vince, really, the only two people that can, 2.5. Vince McMahon, Undertaker, and, Michelle, for, how much he might consider her opinion in things. I would imagine really his opinion on his career is more based on what he and Vince thinks. They don't acknowledge that Taker should have retired a long time ago. They acknowledge the pain. They acknowledge all the things that The Undertaker had to go through to build his body back up. He talks about the regimen of, he goes through, he has the match, and then he takes time off, has surgeries to repair all the nagging injuries that he has, and he goes right back into rehab mode and workout mode to do it again the next year. But they don't talk about why he doesn't just retire for the benefit of his health, his quality of life, his career, the legacy of his career, as opposed to having these kind of embarrassments out there on a regular basis. They don't talk about that really in this first episode, and that's kind of frustrating. I can feel the overarching theme for me watching this is frustration. It's the same frustration that I've had with watching The Undertaker perform since he lost the streak. And that is, that should be it. He should retire. That should be the end of it. Let's go back to this. They go over for a while Roman's respect for Undertaker, but just looking at that documentary footage, you can tell the difference between a Roman Reigns and an Undertaker. You can tell Roman is at the top of his game, and Taker is at the bottom of his. You can tell the difference, man. Like you can see the difference in them and how that match never should have happened. And Taker talks about, again, when he was in the Rumble, and he knew that he shouldn't have geared up for this match to be with this kid because he was in no shape whatsoever to be in that match. And they show clips of that match, including what is possibly the most embarrassing moment of Taker's career, where they try the reverse Tombstone Spot, and it goes all to hell in the middle of the ring. And it's sad. And it's just sad. And that goes into Undertaker talking on camera about not wanting to be an embarrassment. Well, that horse has left the barn years ago. It left the barn a long time ago, unfortunately. And it is a very unfortunate thing for a man of The Undertaker's caliber to do that. And then near the end, after the Roman match, Taker's backstage, he's talking about, he's content riding off into the sunset, etc., etc. This is how I ride off in the sunset, this is how I ride off in the sunset, and he gets hugged by a damn near naked Triple H, and Vince goes in and sees him when he's in the doctor's office, and there's Michelle there, and everybody's crying, and he just puts stuff in the middle of the ring and all this other stuff, and there are guys shaking his hand backstage, hell of a match, oh man, that's amazing, we love you, Taker, it's been a pleasure, Jericho, the second youngest AEW champion of all time, Christopher Young Jericho, comes in, and he talks about, he saw the camera crew, and he thought, it must be talking about the Undertaker's last match of his career, and he talks with the Undertaker, etc., etc. And then they show a preview of the next episode where Taker and Michelle are watching the match, I guess for the first time, and Taker is embarrassed of that reverse Tombstone Spot.
The way it goes, Mr. Austin, is until you click that Groupon link in the description, you don't have a chance in hell.
Celebrity voice in person.
It's very sad that The Undertaker is still wrestling. It has been sad for years. There has been allowances and excuses for years for The Undertaker still having matches. There have been, and I'll just say it, stupid marks. They're like, we want to see The Undertaker again. We still want to see him. He's still The Undertaker. Ah, come on. I want to see him against Bray Wyatt. I still want to see him against Sting. I still want to see him. I still want to. Stop it. Fucking stop it. Fucking stop it. If you gave damn number one about this man's quality of life after wrestling, because there is an after wrestling, you would not want to see him wrestle again. You would want him to be able to retire in peace. You would see what is clearly right there and has been for years. Has been since the match with Brock. Oh, you're just mad because he lost the streak. Well, that's one thing, but that's not the thing. Yes, it is stupid that he lost the streak at all. But the problem is not him losing the streak. Because you could do that creative ways if you need to. And honestly, I thought when The Undertaker did retire, it would be at WrestleMania. It would be losing the streak. I had a creative way of doing it where they brought back all his rivals that were still alive, or as many of them as they could, and they all buried him. Like all the ghosts of Undertaker's past finally come back to pull The Undertaker down, to haunt The Undertaker or whatever. But they didn't do that. They had him lose to Brock, who was the next big lion, even though he was already a big lion. Fine. That should have been it. You could see in that match with Brock, that should have been it. Taker wasn't moving the same. That should have been it. Okay, he was knocked out. Okay. Fast forward then to the match at SummerSlam. That wasn't a good match. Y'all are fooling yourselves and for years, that's been one of these wrestling matches that's been lauded as, oh, it's still good, it's still Taker. No. Just moving slow, moving sluggish, injured. No. And then he's had all these other runs of matches that he's had where that should not have taken place. He shouldn't have had the match with Cena. He shouldn't have had the match with Bray. He shouldn't have had these matches. He never should have had the match with Goldberg. He shouldn't have had these matches. They shouldn't have existed. The possibility of these matches happening at all, these embarrassments happening at all, particularly to a man with the career of The Undertaker, at this point in his career, shouldn't have happened at all. That Super Showdown match, the tag match, where everybody in that match walked away injured except for Shawn Michaels, should not have happened. And not because of anything that other people did to themselves, but because of their bodies all breaking down at the same time. Never should have happened. Never should have happened. Ever. WrestleMania 30, Run Off in the Sunset, that's it. Never should have happened. If you're being realistic, the last great match The Undertaker had was against CM Punk. He had a decent one in the tag match with Roman at Extreme Rules. That's because he didn't do anything. I think won that tag match in Extreme Rules tag team match, but they were still on aprons and shit. Stupid rules. It's dumb. It was a dumb concept of match, and it was halfway decent because The Undertaker was in a tag situation where he didn't have to do the heavy lifting, where everybody else in the ring could do the heavy lifting for him. But again, never should have happened. And I'm starting to think with this documentary, that this is going to be a theme in this documentary. First off, the documentary, obviously, the quality of it is very good. You know, WWE is very good with their documentary series in terms of footage that they use, in terms of camera angles, all that different thing, the interviews, the music, or all that stuff is fantastic. Fantastic, well done production. I wonder how many of these episodes I can go through watching the deterioration of this guy, and how many of the, because this first episode they knew that the quality of Undertaker's work and stuff and the injuries and all that stuff was in the room, but they didn't necessarily downplay it, but they didn't necessarily WWE-ify it either. I wonder at which episode will they WWE-ify it and make it seem like a triumph story that, the Undertaker's still fighting, he's still in fighting shape, he's still putting up, he's still having Broadways, he's still wowing the crowd and all this other shit, when that's not the actual objective reality. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason why I have not watched the Ruthless Aggression documentary, because immediately I heard about how they bullshitted the fuck out of that. How they bullshitted the fuck out of that documentary. There's a reason why I didn't watch it. I haven't watched it yet and have no plans on watching it whatsoever. This one I'm like, I was like, okay, maybe they'll be honest in this. We'll see. We'll see. This first episode was very well done. It was frustrating as all hell, though. I was watching it, and so many times I cried out, but you are too old. You should have retired a long time ago. They bring up these points of, only he knows, and this, that, and the other. They interview Vince McMahon. They interview Vince. They have backstage footage of Vince visiting the Undertaker in the trainer's office. He's fucking, he sits down and talks about the Undertaker for a little while. I wonder how long until I just get utterly and totally frustrated with this shit. Because my opinion of the Undertaker's career right now is this: Vince McMahon, the only person Taker will listen to about not coming back is Vince. Vince will never tell Undertaker that he can't come back, because Vince acknowledges, and I think this may have been something that came up from WWE themselves' mouths, or maybe it was around the Sphere somewhere, but where Vince says, or where it said that the Undertaker is Vince McMahon's greatest creation. Because he didn't really create Hulk Hogan. He took what was created in AWA and put it in red and yellow. He didn't create Hulkamania. You know what I mean? He created the Undertaker though. Basically from whole cloth. And Taker, the man, has stayed with and loyal to Vince McMahon this entire time. If Vince acknowledges that it's time for Taker to go, I feel like he looks at Undertaker as an extension of himself, the same way he did Shawn Michaels in the 90s. If he acknowledges Taker, it's time for him to go, he might have to acknowledge that it might be time for Vince to go. Vince might have to acknowledge that maybe it's time for him to not have his hands in everything and ruin a lot of the good shit that he creates or likes, or that we like, right? Like with, like he's been trying to push Roman down the fans' throats for years, and the fans would have taken Roman Reigns had he not been Vincified, had he not been suffering succotash sons and all this other garbage. You know what I mean? There's plenty of examples where, and he's bringing back Goldberg and all these old guys to bury the current roster. There's no good superstar. All the list of arguments and complaints that fans have, legitimate ones that fans have, and there are plenty about Vince McMahon and WWE and how the company is run and all that other stuff. It all stops with him. As much as, we like to think Stephanie might have a lot to do with it, but it all stops and starts with him. So if he has to acknowledge that Taker can't do this anymore, he might have to acknowledge that Vince, I can't do this anymore. And he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't like to sell sickness. Think he's gonna try to sell death? Think he's gonna, not even death, you think he's gonna try to sell retirement? Retire? Vince is gonna die in Titan Tower the same way, unfortunately, it looks like Taker's gonna die in the ring. And that might happen. They showed footage of this first episode of Taker collapsing and that match with Triple H where he had to be carted out from WrestleMania. Talking about him, you know, all the injuries and stuff and how he can barely, and you can see it, he can barely walk. He can barely walk. It's sad. It is sad beyond belief. And I get... That's why anytime I see these marks, and that's what they are, they're marks. Not even marks, they're just idiots. Not fuck marks, they're idiots and or selfish. Talk about how they still want to see Taker, how wouldn't it be greater? Here's how we get Sting versus Taker at this WrestleMania and all this other stuff. Like, stop it. Stop it! For God's sakes, I want to see Taker heal up as much as possible from the injuries that he's had and live the rest of his life in happiness with Michelle McCool and his kids. I don't want to see Taker in a wheelchair next year because he came out trying to do leg drops on aprons with hips that have been worked on and surgery since at least 1998? Since at least 99. At 99 was when he went down. Since at least 99. For the past 21 years, Taker's hips have been an issue. At least. At least. I don't know how I'm gonna get through what the other half a dozen episodes of this without losing my absolute mind. I mean, I'm gonna watch them. Like, luckily they're not binge. Like, if they were all bingeable right now, I'd lose my shit. I don't think I'll be watching this more than one way through, but it's easily the most frustrating thing to sit and watch how sad The Undertaker's gotten. How sad it's gotten for his career. Easily. Party people, that was the first episode of The Last Ride, Undertaker, my review of it. Again, like I mentioned, it's definitely worth the watch just from the perspective of the cinematography and all other stuff and being able to watch it. And honestly, those idiots that I was talking about, you may be one of them. It's okay. We've all been idiots about something. But those idiots I've been talking about that are sitting there, rah, we still want to see The Undertaker wrestle. Watch this. Go to the network and watch this first episode. And I just mute it. Don't even listen to anything. Just watch The Undertaker try to walk. Just watch Mark Calloway try to walk. And this was filmed 3 years ago. Watch him try to walk then. And then still try to justify him going out there and wrestling now. You can't. Not with a good conscience. Anyway, party people, I'm done ranting. Tell me what you think down there in the comment section. Did you watch it? Are you planning on watching it? We saw, we a lot of the stuff we've seen before. There's really only a couple things that we didn't necessarily see or know from, the wrestling sphere in this, but a couple of highlights. Yes, the Vince interview was a highlight, and again, just watching not even, because they go over some. That's not even all of the stuff that the Undertakers had to deal with physically, but having watched that, it gives you a new appreciation for what he's done in his career. But to me, the big walkaway is that this should have been over years ago. But we'll see what happens in the next episode. Tell me what you think down there in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe. What did I say? I said like it. I said share it. I said subscribe to it. Also comment down there in the comment section. All that stuff helps with algorithm. I need that. Especially the sharing, because hey, guess what? That'll help get more people into the party, and hopefully those people will subscribe, because I need 1,000 subscribers to help fuel a whole bunch of other stuff and some more watch time. That's part of the reason why you're here. Like, share, subscribe. I've also got a Patreon though, patreon.com/surreal469, patreon.com/surreal, SURREAL, the numbers 469. Go there, show your support. I mentioned, how do we even get here? The links will be in the comment section down there. We do podcasts at least once a week, maybe twice. I don't know. We're doing podcasts. All that stuff will help out with everything here at the party. And that, party people, unlike trying to watch Mark Calloway walk, ain't bad. Cheers.
I'm a nice guy, I'm a nice place, with a nice smile on my nice face. Turn it back and I'm making sure my night's straight. And when you're out of town, I'll be making sure your wife's straight.